Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again. Now it's time for episode 250 of Album of the Day, in which for today's album review, I'm going to be talking about the new album from a rapper and singer and producer who has had a pretty polarizing career. Back in the early to mid 2010s, he was one of the most divisive figures in hip hop, but lately has progressed and matured into something that a lot more people seem to really love, as he has definitely turned from hip hop's class clown into a more mature artist. Of course, I am talking about Tyler, the Creator, in which I am here to review his new album, which was released on May 17th, 2019. And the album is called Igor. And as you can see, I was very happy to finally find this album on vinyl, because this is definitely one of my favorite hip-hop records of the year. Even though this is probably the least hip-hop oriented album in his discography. And here's the album cover, which has this really nice pink hue along with this kind of black and white picture of Tyler, but kind of cut around where his hair is a little bit. So he kind of looks like a Frankenstein monster kind of thing. So, which makes sense because Igor is usually used to describe, as Anthony Fantano pointed out, like monsters and beasts and some sort of like crazy goblin things. So it makes sense for the album cover. Here's the back, which just has the name of the album. And it's got a gatefold. No lyrics, unfortunately, but it does have liner notes for all the songs, which there are 12 songs in the record, and it's over 39 minutes, even though on this vinyl it's 43 minutes, because we have a bonus track on here, Boyfriend, which was released about a month after IGOR'S first released. And this album was kind of quietly announced, because, there was a single, EARFQUAKE, that came out, but it was still kind of released as sort of a surprise a little bit to fans. And here's like a little insert. This has like photo. This is Tyler's Igor costume, which you see in the video for EARFQUAKE. Here's side A, then there's side B. Bought this like a chunk, by the way. And it also makes total sense. I'm wearing a Grinch t-shirt because he actually did some of the music for that new Grinch movie. Oh yeah, and that's the vinyl packaging for Igor, the new album from Tyler, the Creator. I had never listened to much Tyler until hearing his 2017 album Flower Boy, but based on what I've heard about his output before Flower Boy, I'm actually quite happy that Flower Boy was my first sort of taste of Tyler's music, really, because his music, from what I heard, didn't really sound like anything I would like to listen to necessarily, but Flower Boy, beautiful record, definitely one of my favorite hip-hop records of 2017. The production, Tyler's bars on that thing, the sort of loose concept that the album revolved around was absolutely wonderful. So definitely his best album for sure. This album takes a little bit of a different direction. It's significantly less polished production-wise. It's more lo-fi. And also, it's probably the least hip-hop thing Tyler has ever done, focusing more on like R&B and neo soul, but also like some indie and bedroom pop elements in there too. So there's obviously a bunch of influences that Tyler plays off of on this album, and not just in hip hop and soul on this album. And it's also a breakup record. It's therefore Tyler at his most mature and cohesive thematically too. I will say, right out of the gate from the opening cut, I am definitely pulled right in. I mean, IGOR'S theme, I know it's supposed to be an intro, but it's one of my favorite tracks on the album. Love this kind of tense, growling bass synth drone that opens the song. It makes me feel like I'm being sucked into this like colorful psychedelic vortex before eventually we get some kind of jazzy drums, as well as some kind of ad-libbed vocals throughout the song, as well as this catchy little cheeky vocal to open the track. Run around town, they gon' feel this one. Run around town, they gon' feel this one. Which is actually sung by, not by Tyler, but the one and only Little Uzi Vert. But pitch shifted a little bit so that way his voice fits the melody, but it really surprises me that the pretty much the godfather of emo and SoundCloud trap, Little Uzi Vert, would be singing this melody, because it really is gorgeous, and I think it's perfect little intro for what's to come on the album. And also the track does feature this really cool synth solo at the end too, before it transitions into the first actual song on the record, EARFQUAKE. And love this song. It's definitely one of my favorite singles of the year. Tyler singing on that track is just so full of soul as he sings things like, "Don't leave, it's my fault." I just can't help but just sing along every time that big chorus comes in. Jaunty pianos on the track, along with kind of syrupy chord progressions, as Uproxx pointed out about the track. And also, we get this really beautiful rap verse from Mr. Playboi Carti. Which I can't even... which he does do some pretty catchy syllables on the track. Anybody row for my lord, I'ma call my lord. My gun set me up, big gun set me up. I would tell you, and the wiki, how I figure. I can't even tell what's coming out of his mouth, but yet I feel it all the way through, for sure. Which is one of the things I think is really cool about Playboi Carti, and why he's probably my favorite mumble rapper. Also some great background vocals that definitely bring a lot of soul from like Charlie Wilson too. It's a great track, and I think it's cool how it transitions into the next track on here, I think, which Needle Drop was so right. This track is very Kanye West for sure. I mean, Kanye West, he's been an influence on Tyler's music before, and obviously he's been on some of Tyler's songs before, but it's really here where I think he uses that influence to amazing effect. The bright synths, the kind of lo-fi beat, even the flow reminds me of Kanye West a little bit. And also, we do get some very beautiful background vocals from Solange on this track, too. Like one of many features on this album, which I think it's interesting. The features on this album don't really hit you right away. In fact, that's why it took a couple of weeks for Tyler fans to really kind of figure out who's who on the album, because he really uses all the guests as an instrument, as supporting elements, as this is really a Tyler album. Rather than a Tyler in features album, for sure. Features album. Also really like that very jazzy bridge in the middle, I think is really nice. It's definitely a great track on the record. And then following that, we get a little bit of a voice, a spoken word interlude from Mr. Gerard Carmichael. It's a track called Exactly What You Run From, You End Up Chasing, where he's sort of talking about how you just sort of, you can't help just chasing something and giving it everything you can, because there's always going to be an obstacle in life. Though on the vinyl, the next track after, I think, was Boyfriend, which opens up with a really nice vocal from Charlie Wilson, before it goes into this kind of distorted, pitch-shifted, vocal-driven sort of groove, which this is a good track. I do like some of the ideas on here, but I will say that this is, you know, but I will say when it's included in the album, it's actually kind of my least favorite track on the album. You know, I just feel that it's maybe a little too lo-fi and also doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the album, in my opinion. And I just think the interlude of Exactly What You Run From had a lot more impact without the song on the album. So that's kind of why it's not my favorite on the album. I do really like the next track on here, Running Out of Time, which yet another influence that Tyler plays off of on this track is actually Frank Ocean. In fact, I even thought at one point Frank Ocean was on the track until it was announced, until he tweeted that Frank Ocean is not on the album. But like the pitch-shifted vocals, the kind of psychedelic synths, and the very sad lyrics on here, very Frank Ocean for sure. It reminds me of Blonde. Blonde. But then later on, Tyler delivers this very kind of urgent rap verse at the end where he's sort of telling this other side of him, you know, take the mask off, stop lying for people, if you're going to show off the real you, just lose the costume. But the next track on here, New Magic Wand, is far more menacing for sure. Love the kind of the kind of intense, sinister synths on the track. There's some really nice drumming that I think fits with the groove really well. Tyler singing on the track has this kind of eerie melody. I saw a photo, you look joyous. My eyes are green, I eat my veggies. And not only is his rap incredibly distorted on the track, but it's also like just very like wild and psychotic too. He's sort of channeling his inner Norman Bates, as Fantano pointed out. He's sort of in this moment where he's just, you know, completely gone mad pretty much after this relationship of his has come to an end. And then the song ends with him delivering this verse that is very urgent, that I think really adds a lot to the album too. And you can even hear him kind of grunt a little bit before it, sort of showing the emotional impact, as well as sort of showing how kind of ape shit he's gone on this track. And also another track where I thought A$AP Rocky was on the track at first, but then until Tyler tweeted that he is in fact not on the track. The next track, A Boy Is a Gun, is certainly another track that reminds me of Kanye a little bit. I mean, this sounds like a cut that maybe didn't make it onto the late registration track list a little bit. But, you know, Anthony Fantano, I definitely do agree. I hear a lot of Kanye here on this track and on I Think. Which I do really like this track too, but I will say this is another one I'm not as fond of because, you know, it's kind of cyclical groove after a while does kind of, you know, drain on a little bit, even though I love the kind of pitch-shifted Solange vocal samples, the twinkling pianos in the track. It's definitely very beautiful and sad as well. And I also do really like some of Tyler's bars on the track. For example, there's a line in here about, like, take your hoodie off, why'd you hide your face from me, sugar, diabetic to the first degree. You invited me to breakfast. Why the F you? Your ex here. Definitely some of my favorite lines on here, and he's sort of coming to a point of just very bluntly stating stay away from me to this significant other. The next track, Puppet, is definitely a track where I think the sad boy vibes get even more downtrodden on this track, but it results in definitely a beautiful track, and I will say from this point on in the record is when it's like incredibly strong in my opinion. Needle Drop actually made a very interesting sort of comparison of this track, sort of saying it was a combination of like an old school soul song and like a harrowing Bright Eyes ballad. I never really thought of that until hearing his review, but then after seeing his review and then listening to the song again, I definitely do see how Bright Eyes actually is a little bit of an influence on this album. I mean, I could totally picture Conor Oberst singing some pretty sad lyrics over this instrumental. And speaking of Kanye himself also does appear on this track, providing this feature that is kind of in the background, not really there, but I think that its kind of freewheeling representation does complement, really does add a lot to the album, and sort of how Tyler's in a moment of just like, sort of moving on and like, forgetting about this relationship of his that was not so great. But then the song goes into this very kind of sinister, almost horror film inspired outro. I mean, this is kind of a crazy comparison, but the end of this track actually reminds me of the It's a Small World theme a little bit, because it's like kind of evil, but at the same time you can't help but listen to it. And this song does end with yet another very memorable Gerard Carmichael cameo, where he's saying, but at some point you come to your senses. A couple other interludes from him that I do really like on here are like, sometimes you gotta close a door to open a window. I don't know what's harder, letting go or just being okay with it. I have a problem with wasted potential. That shit crushes your spirit. It really does. Then the next track, What's Good, is easily the most aggressive song on the album, and I just can't help but picture Tyler like dancing in his Igor suit to this song, which is why I don't understand why we don't have really a video for the song yet. But I do really like the kind of, this song basically sounds like the musical equivalent of someone just having this kind of bloody brawl with another person. The synths remind me out of an 80s slasher film a little bit, and Tyler is very kind of psychotic in his performance on this track, as he's shouting things like, one of my favorite lines on here, "If the cop says my name, bitch, I mean, go!" Yeah, I love just how crazed out he sounds on this track. But then the song also features this really beautiful kind of jazzy chorus too. Then we get this what sounds like maybe a sample or vocal performance of that goes, "I see the light," which if you're wondering who did the "I see the light" hook on this track, it's actually Slow Tie. a rapper whom I had never heard of until this album. But thanks to this album, I found a pretty cool MC from Britain. From Britain. Then Tyler delivers this totally insane bridge where he's opens it up by saying Dracula, Dracula, Dracula. The very hurried way he says that is just so incredible. I gotta give him props for it. The track Gone Gone, on the other hand, feels a little bit like him sort of moving on, and he sort of feels a little bit of relief after letting go of this relationship, even as he's singing "My Love's," as he's singing about how his love is gone. Also, do really like the CeeLo feature on this track was great. My love's gone. He just delivers so much soul in his performance, and it goes so well over the jangly acoustic guitars and the sort of colorful, summery synths on the track. And then also the point where those layers of electric guitars come in, I think is really beautiful also. So really showing that indie music actually makes a little bit of an influence on this track, a little bit. I definitely hear a little bit of bedroom pop vibes from this track. Then later on, as the song as some of the instrumentation drops out, Tyler delivers one of his best rap verses on the album, too. And his flow on there, I think, is really well done, too. Over some kind of pitch-shifted samples of CeeLo's vocal. But then the song transitions into this kind of shorter track, Thank You, where Tyler's sort of saying to this significant other, thank you for all you've done for me, but I never want to fall in love again. And his pitch shifting, I think, goes perfectly onto those lyrics, because I think it really fits the instrumental really well. Then the next track, I Don't Love You Anymore, is a track that was so lo-fi that initially I wasn't really that crazy about this track because of the way it sounded, but it has grown on me since then because I do really like how this is essentially Tyler throwing a big fit about letting go of this relationship, so it only adds that much more impact to hearing him sing in a kind of zany way, I don't love you anymore, and it's so catchy over the kind of psychedelic soul instrumental, and I definitely do really like those kind of dramatic string synths on the track, and just how sad the song sounds, I think, is very beautiful too. Then the closing track, Are We Still Friends, is this is definitely one of the best closers, I think, of 2019. Just like Anthony Fantano said, if you really want to appreciate the song incredibly well, I highly recommend listening to the album all the way through, because the closing track will make much more sense. Tyler delivers this kind of soulful, catchy performance that's definitely has a little bit of pitching down done on it, and really goes well over the kind of soulful beat, which features some samples of. So the sample on here is an Al Green song, "Dream," which I will say that sample, those vocals melt very beautifully into the instrumental. Also love the kind of bluesy guitar breakdown in the middle. Pharrell makes a pretty good cameo on the track, but then the song bleeds into this very awesome kind of screaming that Tyler does at the end, where it's like he's essentially done with all his emotions, and he's just gonna let them all out in just one blood-curdling scream at the end. It's really nice contrast with how kind of beautiful the song sounds, because he is really just fed up with all he's dealt with. Really just a very satisfying way to end the album. Yeah, I love Igor. I think it's a great album. I will say that, I may have commented on some videos of some of the songs on YouTube saying that I like this album better. As the year went on, I will say that I do like Flower Boy a little better, because I think the album is a little better produced and structured a little bit, though I do think the lo-fi sound of this album, I think, is really well done too, and well done too. But I will say that Igor is definitely a much needed step forward for Tyler, and for anyone who may have been maybe a more casual Tyler fan who wants to hear more of the soulful side of him, likely do consider it his best album, which is why I totally get why The Needle Drop says this is his best album, because this is probably the most honest and direct Tyler we've gotten thus far. So I'm going with a strong 8 out of 10 for this new Tyler the Creator record, Igor, and I'll see you for episode 251.